What is up guys, I'm Shivam Pandey and you're watching The Techpreneurs. So recently as I was designing levels for my platformer game Piggy Tries Again, I was listening to many blogs and reading many podcasts regarding it. I was listening to many podcasts and reading blogs regarding level design process, and here are the top 6 tips that I found very helpful, and I hope it also helps in your level designing process. And obviously if you have to look deep down in all the sources, then the link of that would also be in the description. So let's get started. The first thing is shut up and let the level speak. Sometimes when you are designing levels, you have to convey a certain message to the player. You can do this in two ways, in an explicit manner or in an implicit manner. Explicit is when you directly convey your message to the player, either by using cutscenes or text or by voiceovers or any other direct method. Implicit is when the player themselves figures out what the game wants to tell them. A good level design is when you communicate with your player in an implicit manner more than in an explicit manner. The best way to do an implicit narrative in a game is by using the technique that is used by many theaters or cinema to tell a story by its environment. So in a similar way, if you want to create a better level design that speaks for itself, you need to design the level in such a way that it can convey appropriate things to your player. For example, to convey the right path to the player, you can make use of specific colors, or you can make use of a light source in a dim hallway that tells the player in which direction he has to go. If you have to show a murder scene, then you can use decals for blood spatters, or you can use sounds and music or any other environmental thing that can convey that certain thing or that certain feeling to the player through levels, and not just by writing them or directly telling them what actually is happening. Second is the shape theory. There are a number of shapes that you must have witnessed in geometry, and these different shapes have different impact on human brain. There are 3 basic shapes that you need to use while you are creating levels, and these are circles, triangles and squares, and all of these 3 shapes convey different messages to the player in a level. If a player looks at a circular thing or a curved object, it gives a feeling to the player that the object is safe to use and is harmless, and you can see this thing in action in many of the cartoon series where they create friendly characters out of circular shape like Mickey Mouse. Now talking about the triangles, the triangular shape gives a feeling of sharpness and danger to the player and is used to signify evil things or harmful things in a level like cutter or spiky objects. The third shape is the square. Square gives a feeling of stability, neutrality or calmness to the player. So by using these 3 shapes in a right way, you can convey the right message to the player. For example, for a safe house in your game, you can make its walls to be curved and less pointed. You can create damage-taking and harmful objects to be pointed, and you can make all the stable blocks or platforms in your level to be square shaped, and thus in this way you can utilize the shape theory to your advantage while designing levels. Wait a second, if you are enjoying this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let's continue. The next point is managing the difficulties of a level. A good level is designed in such a way that it is neither easy nor it is hard, but it depends upon the player how he plays it. Basically, this kind of design is the risk and reward system of levels. Many games have a difficulty option in the main menu or at the start of the game, in which the players has to choose whether the game should be easy, difficult or hard, so that the player can be presented with their appropriate difficulty level. But this method is not a good idea. For a good level design, you can implement the same thing in your game without having an option to select by directly implementing it in a level. So to achieve this, what you can do is you can create a normal path for the player to move towards its goal, and the difficulty level of this part should be easy or medium depending upon the progression of the player. And this part has normal reward system of whatever reward you have in your game. Now you can also add an alternative path for the player that is connected to the same goal but in another way. And this part is much more difficult and requires much more skills for the player. Also, this part has a higher chance of player in failing to complete it. But in return of it, if the player uses this path to solve the particular level, then the reward he gets is better than if he chooses a normal path. So this way now it is the choice of the player to follow normal path and get the normal reward, or to follow a difficult and high risk path but to get double the amount of reward he usually gets. The fourth point is to feed the players intentionally. While walking through your level or solving a certain task or a puzzle, as a level designer, you need to ensure that the player does or performs each and every task with a proper intention and not just for the sake of doing it. He should know what would be the consequence of that task and what would happen if he does not do a particular thing. So to achieve this, you want four basic things given to the player. The first one is a choice. You cannot have a straight away single obvious answer to the problem, because then the player need not have to think about the consequences of his action and would blindly do particular stuff and move out of the level. You have to give him genuine choices so that he can think and act. The next thing he needs is a clear goal. The player must know what actually he needs to do. If the goal isn't clear, then he might get confused midway or maybe even leave the game. The third thing is proper information. The player should have all the appropriate information he needs. If he has a lever, he should know what would happen if he pulls the lever, or how to use a particular tool, and what is the purpose of all the particular items in his inventory. The fourth thing is the time to process the information. After you have given all the required information to the player, he also needs to have the time to process all these informations and to understand it completely, so that he can use that information efficiently to solve a particular task or a puzzle. And this way, the player would complete the task with proper intention that you as a designer want him to have. The next thing is connecting the architecture of the level with player psychology. Video games are declared as a piece of art, and if you look what art is, generally it is something that provokes an emotion or a particular feeling. And through your level design and its architecture, you can force the player to experience a particular emotion. In the game, there can be many examples to this. For example, windows that are placed below your knee level is a sign of power and superiority. But windows placed above your shoulder level can be a sign of imprisonment. Curved rooms are a sign of calmness and safety, while tight corners that limits the view of players arouse an emotion of suspense and also can make the player claustrophobic. Levels designed like a labyrinth or a maze arises some kind of confusion and panic in the players, and a wider open area gives the player an emotion of exploration or can be a sense of isolation. And several other things like that can be used to force the player to feel or do a certain thing depending upon the architecture of your level. The next point is relation between level and its mechanism. Each level that you design in your game should be concentrated upon a particular mechanism, and you need to design that level in such a way that the level helps the player to understand the mechanism even more. It should constantly teach the player how a particular mechanism works and how we can use it in several different ways. Each new mechanism that you introduce in your game should be introduced to the player with a proper level design and should be elaborated more and more in upcoming different levels, increasing the difficulty bit by bit, and finally taking the last test of the player by introducing him to the final challenge level or a final boss fight. This would test the skills of the player for that particular mechanism in all different ways possible. This makes the player quite comfortable with that mechanism, acquiring the skills he needs to use that, and also it gives the player a sense of power and progression. So that is it for today. Hope it helped you. And the game that you are seeing in the background was the same game in which I am working on, Piggy Tries Again. If you want to try its previous version, then the link of that would be in the description. The newer version would be updated very soon for PC and mobile both. And that is it for today's video. If you liked it, consider subscribing the channel and give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to press the bell icon so that you are notified each time I post a new video. We'll see you in the next video. Till then, dream big, hustle hard, and keep watching the Techpreneurs. Bye.